What's up, this is Jono from Baron Carta, and this is a commentary on Devil to Send. Devil to Send's kind of an interesting one because I remember I'd written a bunch of songs kind of about 6 or 7 months into the writing process, many of which are not on Step Into the Plague. And I just felt like I wanted to write something more slayery, because my goal with Baron Carta is to really explore many facets of music, not just super heavy stuff, not just like very gentle, lightweight stuff, just to bridge all of these different sounds together. So I started writing some pretty thrashy stuff. And, you know, when I was playing in my band Severed Fifth, I wrote a song called Fallout, which was always a bit of a hit at gigs. And it was this really frantic kind of slayery kind of song. So I wanted to write something similar as like an intro to Devil to Send. And then as with all of these songs, it kind of moved around and changed and evolved. But then when I was thinking, okay, well, what am I going to put out as the kind of the single for the new release? You know, Ralf and my wife and a bunch of my friends, they were all like, you got to put Devil to Send out. That's the one that you got to put out. So that's what made the lyric video. All right, so let's have a listen, see what it sounds like. Got the buds. Make sure that I'm queued up. Hang on. Here we go. You know, one of the things I love with any kind of music is just the driving bum, 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 bum. You know, I've mentioned elsewhere that part of the goal here was to kind of that AC/DC style driving music. And you can hear that with the bass that's kind of going on just for a split second at the beginning of the song. And then we kind of dig into the thrashing. So the reason why it's this kind of frantic thrashing at the beginning is that the story of this song is this kind of escape from a disease that's going on. Like this is I don't want to get too poetic about my music because I'm not. I'm more of a musician than a lyricist. But this is kind of the story really of the pandemic that was going on around the time that I was writing this, but also just how human beings react in those moments and how there's kind of the violence can be as much of a disease as a disease itself. So I felt like to introduce that topic, it needed to just be this frantic kind of thrashing around, which is what this intro is all about. Love the way Morten brings in those drums. I actually programmed those drums to kind of come in with the double bass drums. And I was a little worried that, because I didn't know Morten when he started, when he went in and recorded the drums in this, because, you know, he came in through Jacob Hansen, who was mixing and mastering it. And I just didn't know whether he was going to have like the snap. Like some drummers, they kind of lag behind the beat a little bit. And some drummers are absolutely on the beat. They're super tight. And no worries about timing with Morten. The goal of this bit was to really just have some driving, heavy kind of, you know, crunching along, because where the song's going to change, you know, and I've mentioned this before, but I'm all about light and shade in music. Like if you want to make something sound really heavy, you got to have something a little lighter before it. So you can have that contrast and that comparison. And I knew I was going to go into this kind of da, 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 where the guitars mirror the percussiveness of the vocals. So that's why this is a little bit more open, more like da, 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 da kind of thing. So you'll hear when it comes in, when the vocals kick in, the guitar actually lightens up in terms of, it's not grinding, it's more just stabbing. Now, I wanted it to just stab for a second there, because that provides a focal point for the listener. Like when you're listening to the song and Ralf has captured your attention, and as usual with the Right Honourable Ralf Scheepers, he's just killing it. The vocals sound amazing. But then this part of the story is where, you know, effectively someone's broken out of the place that they're in. In my mind, this part of the song, I actually see there's a scene in The Walking Dead when, you know, I think it's maybe at the beginning of The Walking Dead, where he wakes up in a hospital and there's no one there and everything's kind of battered and tattered and in pieces, and he's trying to get out. Okay. That's what I was seeing. So the lyrics are about, you know, grab the needle, get your guns and your ammunition and get out of there. But I needed to have that frantic, thrashy sound for that to make any sense. So that's why this bit kicks in. Now, again, talking about light and shade, this is where the next bit of the song kind of comes in, and, you know, it's thrashing away. I wanted it to kind of take a step back and let the guitars like ring out more, just breathe a little more, in the pre-chorus. And, you know, as I've said elsewhere, like I love pre-choruses because they're an appetizer before you get to the main big part of the song, which is the chorus. I step into the place that dogs are in war. This pre-chorus couldn't be pulled off by most vocalists. In fact, when I went and recorded this myself in the studio when I was originally going to sing these songs, in my head, it sounded great while I was singing it, but when I heard it on tape, it just didn't have what it needed. And that is the difference with working with a real professional. Like Ralf Scheepers is a fucking monster on on a microphone. And it's not just, you know, everyone talks about his vocal range. It's not just the vocal range. It's the power and it's the dexterity in which he uses that instrument. It's remarkable. So listen to the bass in the background of this. This is where I wanted the bass to kind of add a flavor to it. The bass is kind of wobbling around behind the guitars because the guitars are just da 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 da. It's not very complicated. So the bass is filling in a lot of that kind of melodic flavor. You know, talking about a great singer is not just about the, you know, hitting the right notes or the octave or anything like that. It's the same thing with drums. You know, when I programmed the drums for Devil to Send and I sent them over to Jacob and he had Morten come into his studio, there are some drummers where when they do fills, they're just ever so slightly off. And you don't have to be a weird audiophile who buys gold cables, you know, to be able to hear it. It just knocks the sound of the music off a little bit. And I was blown away when I got the drum tracks through, because Morten's playing is just so tight. It's so crisp. It's so big. And that combined with Jacob's amazing production skills, it really suits the song really well. This is a very drum heavy song and it needed the right kind of player. I will never take this devil to send. Now this part's an important part of the song to outline because, you know, if you think about this so far, we've had the thrashy bit at the beginning, you know, it kind of lightens up a little bit, then we get into the stabby verse part, and then it gets frantic again, and then you've got the pre-chorus and the big chorus, which we've just been through. Now, a lot of musicians would just kind of repeat the formula, go back to the verse, go back to the pre-chorus, go back to the chorus. And there's a guy called Jim Adams who who was a guitarist in Severed Fifth. And one thing that Jim always said to me over and over again was, Jono, you write songs that are too long and don't repeat yourself. And Jim was totally right about this. So at this point in the song, I was channeling my inner Jim Adams and I thought, okay, what am I going to do? You know, I feel like we need to get back to the franticness of this moment of, you know, someone escaping out of this pandemic and the world is going to shit. What are we going to do? but I didn't want it to be a vocal part. So this is where the music becomes all kind of erratic and kind of goes all over the place. And it's a really erratic guitar section, but also an erratic bass section. It took quite a bit of time to kind of meld these two together with the drums, but I think it sounded pretty good. And this is the design of this is to kind of really make it sound frantic before we kind of step back and get back into the vocals, because I wanted the next vocal parts, which we'll get to be really powerful. I'll talk about that in a second. Now, these vocal parts, this to me is when you're in the heat of this madness that's unfolding around you in the world that you're in. And I wanted these two next vocal lines, which are separated, to be the kind of lines where when someone's watching this live, that they feel really empowered when they sing this out live. Like we've all been to shows, you know, it's kind of like with Machine Head in Davidian, like, let freedom ring with a shotgun blast. That moment in that song is just a moment where everybody is just drunk on happy juice that's flowing around in your brain, right? I wanted the same kind of thing, same vibe with these kind of vocal lines. You know, this first one, which Ralf just absolutely nailed, I think is all about kind of like not giving it. Don't mistake my weakness for white flags in the air. You know, don't mistake my weakness for white flags in the air. And it's not just air, it's air. I love how he layers together that kind of high octave and the lower octave. You know, when I originally went in to sing this myself and I tried to do this, it sounded like me and Elmo from Sesame Street singing. It sounded terrible. But all I could hear was that kind of Ralf Scheepers' Primal Fear way of singing, because he does that a lot in that music, that incredibly powerful command of those two different octaves blended together. And I love that technique. It's a technique that, you know, Glenn Benton uses a lot in Dayside, for example. You know, but he does it with growl and it sounds awesome. So that lyric, I think, sounds so cool the way he sings it. And then, you know, the next one too. I stare down evil, let the devil beware. If you don't feel good about that, there's something wrong with you. Now, the next bit is where kind of, again, dialing it back a little bit, light and shade. And there's a bit where it stops, where you just hear the vocal, you know, and we'll get there. I'll talk about it in a second. Now, this bit, this next line, just Ralf, is what, for me, was one of the most important parts of writing this song. You know, where it just stops and everything else is silent for just a moment, where you just hear this fucking monster of a singer just belt this out. And I just, in my mind, I can hear this live. I can hear the crowd just singing this line, and just the power of it. Everything else is stripped away. It's just Ralf, just the audience. It was really important to me that he got this right. And I was honestly expecting to ask him to do this a bunch of times, because I was so nervous about it not meeting what I heard in my head. You won't be surprised to hear this. Nailed it first time. The Right Honourable Ralf Scheepers. Incredible talent, my friends. Don't mistake my strength as a defender who cares. My vision's fading to gray as my body takes the fight to the end. Unset cold armies will rave. I will never take this devil to stand. When I had the first version of this song and Ralf did the vocals on it, he said, dude, you got to repeat that chorus. He said, it sounds weird without it being repeated. It's so powerful. Totally right. So it gets repeated. Now, for the outro of the song, I'm a big fan of just kind of getting into these big, thick, grindy, rhythmic outros. I think it's just a very satisfying conclusion. It's, you know, it's kind of the equivalent of, you know, laying back in your chair after a nice meal and having a glass of port or, you know, or a gin and tonic or something, and just kind of relaxing, after you've kind of been through this journey. But they can kind of get samey. So, what I did is I changed the drums partway through when I programmed the drums, but then when Morten played them in the studio, I don't know what he did. I'm going to need to go and listen to it again. But he did something and it just really underlines that subtle change in the song. So for the second half of this outro, it just sounds heavy as hell when he changes that drum pattern. It's a tiny change. The guitar's not really changing dramatically. It's all drums. And that, where Ralf sings, you know, unshackled armies will maim, when he repeats that, that was all him. He came up with that idea. And that ringing out of that sound, of his vocal sound, that was all Jacob. So, you know, I love it. I'm, you know, we shouldn't be braggadocious about the things that we do, but I'm really proud of Devil Descend. It's exactly the kind of music that I wanted to write with Baron Carta. And I'm so blessed to have, you know, Ralf, Morten, Jacob all bringing their talents to the fold as well. So there we are, my friends. Go and check it out. Step into the Plague. It's available right now. Go and give it a listen. Join the Baron Carta army. Peace out.